Hey guys, this is the first part of section 2 of the skeletal system, and in this part we're going through the upper body and the extremities in the upper body. So let's take a look at what we're looking at. So we got the bony thorax, which is made of the sternum, ribs, and thoracic vertebra, which we talked about a little bit in the end of the first section. The thoracic cage, of course, surrounds your chest. And then those come together in the front at the sternum, and they come together in the back at the thoracic vertebra. And that's protecting all your vital organs. Everything in there is keeping you alive, basically. Your heart, lungs, liver, gallbladder, stomach, all of that. The sternum in the front where it connects, this actually has 3 parts. It's not just one big bone. It has a big part on the top called the manubrium, and that's what articulates with your clavicle up here, and then your ribs down here. The middle part's called the body, and that's articulating with the ribs in the middle. And at the bottom, you have this little thing that sticks out the bottom called the xiphoid process. And it's really delicate down at the bottom. Can be damaged if it's hit very hard. That's why in contact sports like football, they have those plates that come down far underneath that sternum so it can protect that xiphoid process. You have 12 pairs of ribs, which means you have 24 total. It is not true that males have one less than females. Everybody has 12 on each side, 24 total, unless for some reason you were born with a difference in the way that your bones grew, but most people have 12 on each side, males and females. There's 2 different kinds, there's 2 different categories of ribs in your rib cage. The first is called the true ribs. There's 7 of those. They're called true ribs because they're connected to the thoracic vertebra in the back, and they come forward and they connect really close to the sternum. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And those connect right up to the sternum up there. The other 5 are called false ribs, 3 of which are connected to the cartilage here. That goes up to the sternum also, but the last 2 are called floating ribs. Those aren't connected to cartilage at all. They're just free floating, so they're called floating ribs. So that's how they connect in the front, and they all connect to the thoracic vertebra in the back. In between each rib, you have a space called the intercostal space, and those spaces actually allow for assistance in breathing. You have what's called intercostal muscles in there, and they attach all those bones together, and when you breathe, there's a little bit of assistance that happens from those muscles. Appendicular skeleton. So the ribs are part of the axial skeleton, and that is the end of axial skeleton. Appendicular skeleton is what we're going to talk about the rest of the time, and that's composed of 126 of your 206 bones. So most of your bones are in your appendicular skeleton, well over 50%. And these are your arms and legs and everything that they attach to. So if you're looking at the lower part of your body, you got your legs, and they attach to the pelvis, so the pelvis is also part of the appendicular skeleton. It ends at the sacrum. In the upper body, you have your arms, which attaches to the scapula, which also attaches to the clavicle. So all of that together is one unit, and that is part of the appendicular skeleton also. So they don't end until the sternum. So that's appendicular skeleton. So the one we're going to talk about today is the upper body, or the shoulder girdle. And the shoulder girdle itself consists of the clavicle and the scapula. And so the clavicle connects anteriorly to the sternum, the manubrium of the sternum, and then it connects to the the scapula over here at what's called the acromion process. of the scapula. So that's why that's called the AC joint. Some of you may have heard of the AC joint before. That stands for acromioclavicular joint, because that's the acromion process of the scapula, and that's the clavicle. So that's where they connect, and that's the joint right there. This scapula has that acromion as a part of it. Another part of it right here that sticks out, that's called the coracoid process, and that's where there's a lot of muscle attachment there. So you have the clavicle here. The other way of referring to that is the collarbone, one of the most commonly broken bones in the body, especially during sporting events, and those attach to the manubrium up here, and then the acromion over there, and then that's a brace. Basically, it holds your arm away from your body and it stabilizes it, keeps it in position so that you can have the flexibility that you do in your arm and your shoulder. When it's broken, though, like I said, it's very commonly broken in sports. The whole shoulder caves in immediately, so this whole area will kind of like drop in, because this is the only way that your shoulder joint is attached to the rest of the body. Your scapula doesn't actually attach to anything back there as far as another bone, but it attaches to the humerus and the clavicle up here. So if this breaks, it kind of like makes that whole joint collapse. The scapula, like I said, that's connected to the clavicle also, and the humerus. This is also referred to as the shoulder blade. So if you feel in the back of your back behind your shoulder and you kind of move your arm around a little bit, you can feel this move up and down. This doesn't connect to anything in the back, but it connects to the humerus on the side and the clavicle in the front. It has a couple parts to it. Like I said, it has the acromion, which is this part right here that sticks up, this part right here, and that's where the clavicle connects. And then it has the coracoid process, which is this guy right here, and that's the back view of it. So if you are looking at somebody's back, this is the view that you see of the scapula. This is the part that goes up against the ribs. And again, these things sticking out of the scapula, those are for muscle attachment. You also have this ridge right here in the back of your scapula. It's called the spine of the scapula. So there's a lot of different parts to the scapula. Shoulder girdle, very light, allows for a lot of movement. And that's great. So you have a lot of flexibility, a lot of movement, a lot of chance to get the ability to use your arm and get a lot of free, movable motion there. But the downside to that is that because it's so flexible, it can also dislocate fairly easily. So it has a loose attachment here between the humerus and the scapula, and they connect in what's called the glenoid fossa, which is this little kind of divot right here in the scapula, and that's the glenoid cavity. It's really shallow, and you can see how thick that humeral head is, so it can just kind of slide out of there fairly easily. Bones of the upper limbs, you have 30 separate bones from the skeletal framework of each upper limb. So 30 bones in one limb. 1, 2, 3, and then you have 8 in your wrist, which is 11, and then you have 2 bones in your thumb, which is 13, 3 in each finger, so that's another 12, that's 25, and then you have 5 more in the metacarpals, that's 30 bones. That's 30 bones in each arm out of the 206. So if you take both bones, both arms, that's 60 bones. So the arm, you have the humerus, which is the top, connects to the scapula up here, and it connects down here to the ulna, and that's how you bend your elbow. This is the back view on the right, and this is the front view on the left. When you're referring to anatomy, when you say arm, you're talking about the top part of your arm, so from the elbow up. When you say forearm, you're talking about from the elbow down. So the forearm actually has 2 bones. You have radius and ulna. The ulna right here is the medial bone of your forearm, or the one on your pinky side. And then this one on the left, that's your radius, which is on the lateral part of your forearm, or the thumb side. So those two articulate with each other. When you twist your hand up and down, you're actually moving this joint right here between the radius and ulna. They're both proximally and distally, radius and ulna, they articulate at small, what's called radio-ulnar joints. So this is the radio-ulnar joint of the proximal side, and then down here this is the radio-ulnar joint of the distal side. The hand itself has most of the bones in your arm. So you have 8 bones in your wrist, 5 metacarpals, so that's 13. You have 2 in your thumb, that's 15, and then you have 3 in each finger, which is 12 more. So that's 25 bones just in your hand. 8, 5, 15, plus 12, sorry, 27. So a lot of bones in just your hand there, and the reason why is because you need that articulation. You have to be able to grab things, hold on to things, move your hand, write, do really fine motor skills. And you have bones called the carpals down here, which are the wrist. If you have had medical terminology before, you know that carpo means wrist, so that's where that comes from. Metacarpals are here, and then the phalanges are all the fingers. You have more than just one phalange in each one. There's multiple. They have joints in between them so you can bend your fingers. Each one of these wrist bones has a name, and you will need to know the name of these wrist bones. So make sure that you are learning these and figuring out the best way to remind yourself how to remember. One way you can remember these carpal bones is a mnemonic, which is basically a statement that has the same first letters as the bones. And one mnemonic is called, it goes, Sam likes to push the toy car hard. And that's scaphoid, lunate, tricretrial, pisiform, trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, hamate. So that's one way you can remember that. Sam likes to push the toy car hard. So that's the 8 carpal bones, and they make up that wrist. That allows for that flexibility in your wrist, and there's a lot of different joints in there that allows that to happen. The palm of the hand is the metacarpals. Again, you have 5 of those through there, and when you put something in the middle of your palm, you're putting them right in the middle of those metacarpals, and that there's a little bit of flexibility with the carpal bones and the phalanges there to allow you to clench that fist. And up here is where you have the knuckles, where the metacarpals and the phalanges meet, and then of course in between the bones of the phalanges also, which are the last bones here, and there's 14 of those, 2 in the thumb, 3 in all the rest of the fingers. And that brings us to the end of this part of section 2 of the skeletal system. And make sure that you go back and review, and especially work on memorizing those wrist bones.